For years, I worked, saved, and trusted my family, until my own son decided my money was his. I never thought I'd set a trap for my own son. But when the bank called about a $128,000 transfer I didn't authorize, I stopped being a mother and started being a witness. The bank representative was polite, too polite, that careful tone people use when they think you might fall apart. "Mrs. Collins, did you authorize a transfer of $128,000 this afternoon to a business account under the name Collins Group Holdings?" My blood ran cold. That's my last name, and I sure as hell don't own a business. But I knew who did. Mark, my only child, my late husband's pride and joy. I had trusted him. Maybe I wanted to trust him. Grief does that. I'd let him help set up online access after Richard died. I didn't read the fine print. Didn't see he'd added himself as joint holder on 2 of my accounts. He'd been smiling while he robbed me blind. And now, hours later, he was on his way over for dinner. I heard the doorbell ring, took a deep breath, smiled, and opened the door to 2 people who thought I was still in the dark. They had no idea I'd already emptied the account. No idea I'd hired a lawyer. No idea every camera in the house was rolling. And tucked under the buffet, beneath the good china, was a tiny black recorder, blinking red. "Hi, Mom," Mark said, holding out the lilies like peace offerings. "Dinner smells amazing," Jenna added, already looking around like she owned the place. I smiled. "Come in," I said. "Everything's ready." So was I. Mark carried the lilies into the kitchen like some dutiful son on Mother's Day. Jenna floated past me, heels clacking, already scanning for weaknesses like she always did. They didn't notice anything was different. Not the slightly moved bookshelf. Not the discreet new light fixture near the buffet. Not the cable that ran, thin as dental floss, under the rug to the sideboard. I'd walked through the entire house twice that morning, checking battery levels, camera angles, audio clarity. Helen, my attorney, had even helped me test the signal from her office. "Smile, Irene," I whispered to myself in the mirror earlier that day. "Let them think they're safe." That night, I served dinner like I always had, poured the wine, passed the rolls, laughed at their fake stories, and even faker compliments. "You look amazing, Mom," Jenna said, buttering her bread like we weren't about to go to war. Mark leaned back in his chair, easy, relaxed. "You always set such a beautiful table. You could teach Jenna a thing or two." I smiled, the way women are taught to, the way mothers do when their heart is breaking, but the plates still need passing. What they didn't know was that I'd left the financial documents in plain sight, folded neatly inside a manila folder on the corner of the buffet, right next to the wine. That wasn't dessert, that was bait. They were walking straight into paperwork, disguised as dinner. 2 weeks before that dinner, Mark had leaned against my kitchen counter with a cup of coffee he didn't make and advice I didn't ask for. "Mom," he said, all warmth and concern, "you've got way too many accounts. It's a mess. I can help you clean it up. Simplify." Simplify. That word should have tipped me off, because whenever Mark says simplify, it usually means he's about to move something into his name. I said I'd think about it. What I didn't tell him was that I'd already noticed strange charges. Nothing big at first. A gym membership I didn't have, a withdrawal from a bank branch I hadn't visited in months. I thought it was just sloppy banking. Maybe even me forgetting things. But then came the joint account. After Richard died, I let Mark set up online access just to make things easier. He was grieving too, or at least pretending to be. He told me the passwords were too complicated, that he could take care of the bills while I got my head on straight. I remember sitting across the desk from the bank manager while Mark smiled and handed over forms already half filled. "All standard stuff, Mom. Just need your signature." I signed. 3 months later, I saw my name and his listed under one of my primary accounts, joint ownership, which meant if he drained it, it wasn't theft. It was access. I didn't say a word. Not when he mentioned that I didn't really need the second savings account. Not when Jenna joked that I'd forget my own PIN numbers soon enough. Not even when I found out he'd renamed the accounts in the app. One of them just said future. His future, apparently. But it wasn't until my phone buzzed that Tuesday morning. Transfer alert. $128,000 to Collins Group Holdings, LLC, that I knew exactly what I was dealing with. He'd used my trust like a checkbook, and he'd finally written one too big to cash. I sat at my kitchen table, looked at the screen, and said it out loud. This is war, because you don't steal from the woman who taught you how to tie your shoes and balance your checkbook, not without consequences. It wasn't just the money. It never is. It was the way Jenna laughed behind her wine glass when I asked how to update my phone, the way Mark sighed like I was a burden whenever I mentioned how much I missed his father. It was the nicknames. Sweet old mom, our little financial hurricane. Confused, but lovable. Always said with affection, always coated in charm, but always meant to shrink me. I started keeping track in a small black notebook I kept tucked behind the recipe cards. Each time they said something that made me feel like I was already halfway buried, I wrote it down. Dates, phrases, context. At first, I told myself it was to help me remember. But I wasn't forgetting, I was documenting. The pattern became clear fast. Every time I offered help, they turned it into leverage. Every check I wrote when Mark was a little tight this month, every grocery run Jenna forgot her wallet on, they all became part of this strange, twisted ledger they felt entitled to. Jenna once joked at brunch, in front of her friends, that I was their unofficial retirement plan. They laughed. I smiled. Then I went home and underlined that entry in my notebook. Another time, Mark logged into my computer while I was on the phone and said, "You really shouldn't leave your passwords written down like that. What if you got hacked?" He was the hacker. He just wore my son's face. I remembered a moment, last spring. I'd mentioned thinking of downsizing the house. Jenna's eyes lit up. "Oh, Mark and I would love to take this place off your hands. It'd stay in the family." They always used that phrase, in the family. Except to them, that meant in their names. That's when I started to shift, not just emotionally, strategically. I pulled up my old tax files, started checking account histories, backtracked wire transfers, reviewed my insurance policies. I was a bookkeeper for 38 years. They'd forgotten that. They thought I was just a soft-spoken widow with fragile wrists and too many lace doilies. But I remembered every number. And more importantly, I remembered how to build a case. Every insult, every manipulation, every smug little comment, they'd all go in the file. And that file was going somewhere Jenna and Mark couldn't reach, my lawyer's desk. The day before the dinner, I walked into Helen Tran's office with a folder in one hand and 3 decades of disappointment in the other. She looked up from her desk and raised an eyebrow. "Well, if it isn't Irene Collins, my most polite client, what's the occasion?" I dropped the folder on her desk. Inside, the transfer alert, the joint account screenshot, photocopies of my little black notebook. "Pretend you're me," I said. Helen blinked once, then smiled slowly. "Are we pressing charges?" I shook my head. "Not yet. We're setting the table." She leaned back in her chair. "What's your plan?" "Dinner," I said. "And closure." She laughed, not because it was funny, but because she understood the tone in my voice. That flat, measured kind women use when something inside them has stopped breaking and started sharpening. "I want them to confess," I said, "on record, voluntarily. I want to show them exactly who they underestimated. And then I want you to have everything you need to put them in hell." "You're serious." I nodded once. "Irene." She sat up straighter. "This is going to get ugly." It already is. Helen Tran isn't just a lawyer. She's a damn scalpel. Precise, unshakable, and impossible to intimidate. We've known each other since Richard and I moved to the neighborhood. She helped us update our wills when Mark got married. A move, I now realize, that saved me. That afternoon, she drafted a new financial summary showing just $12,000 left in the joint account, the same account Mark thought he'd cleared out. She tweaked the statement so it looked like a routine bank document, complete with header, watermark, and transaction details. It would be accidentally visible during dinner. She also handed me a discreet pen. "Click it once to start recording," she said, "twice to stop. But I'll do you one better." She reached into her bottom drawer and pulled out something wrapped in a cloth napkin. A tiny black recorder, thinner than a key fob. "Where should we plant it?" she asked. "Buffet drawer," I said. "Behind the dessert forks." She smiled. "When lawyers play waitress, you know dessert will sting." By the time I left her office, I didn't feel old. I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. People think revenge is about anger. But it's not. Revenge is a response, a reaction. What I wanted was different. I wanted clarity. I wanted the words out of their mouths, with timestamps and video to match. I wanted to wipe that smirk off Jenna's face when she called me sweet old mom like I was her warm-up act. And I wanted Mark to see, with his own eyes, that I wasn't the silent little ATM he'd built in his head. I had 3 goals. Catch Mark admitting to the theft. Prove Jenna's knowledge and involvement. Let them see, publicly, legally, that I was never the fool. No drama, no screaming. Just facts, documents, and their own voices played back through speakers in a courtroom, if needed. Mark once told me, years ago, "Mom, if you don't document it, it didn't happen." Well, I documented everything, every deposit I had made since Richard died, every time they came over after accidentally missing a mortgage payment or needing help with a short-term bridge, every favor, every receipt, every bit of trust they chewed through with their perfect teeth. And now it was my turn to chew. I'd learned a lot from my years at the freight company, not just numbers. People. You could tell a liar by how specific they got with the wrong details, by how quickly they explained things you hadn't asked about. Mark was going to over-explain. I knew that Jenna was going to fake innocence and then slip. I knew that too, because they didn't see me anymore. They saw a bank account with arthritis. That morning, Mark texted me like nothing was wrong. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll move what's left into the joint account tonight. Make things easier going forward." What's left? As if he hadn't tried to drain me dry 48 hours earlier. I stared at the message for a while, let the shape of it settle in my chest. He really thought I didn't know. He really thought I was too old, or too soft, or too stupid to see what he was doing. I typed 2 words back. "Perfect. Dinner?" He replied with a thumbs up and a heart, the emoji version of a lie. Jenna followed up an hour later with her usual syrupy nonsense. "So excited for dinner, Mom. Want me to bring that quinoa salad you love?" I'd choked on that salad the last time she brought it over. She stood there watching like it was a test I was supposed to fail. I told her, sure, bring whatever you like, because what she was really bringing was evidence. I printed out the text thread, dated, time-stamped, folded it neatly, and added it to the folder Helen had prepped, the one we left by the wine glasses. That afternoon, I poured myself a small glass of red, not to drink, just to smell. It calms me. I sipped once, then went through my checklist again. Front hall cam, armed. Living room cam, armed. Kitchen mic, armed. Recorder pen, full battery. Trust account, secure. Joint account, baited. Lawyer, on standby. The meat thermometer beeped. 165 degrees. Chicken was done. I plated it just before they arrived. Crisp skin, perfect glaze, golden potatoes on the side. Jenna would comment on how traditional it looked. Mark would tell me he missed my cooking. He'd be lying. But I wouldn't be. Because everything I'd said so far, perfect, can't wait to see you, I trust you, had been code. Code for keep talking, keep thinking you're winning. Every perfect hides a period at the end of someone else's sentence. Tonight, they were about to read mine. The first thing Mark did after sitting down was pour himself a generous glass of wine. The second? Brag. He didn't waste time easing into it, just dove straight into the performance he'd probably rehearsed with Jenna in the car. "Mom," he said, spearing a potato, "I've been working on something exciting. A new investment strategy. High yield, low risk. You wouldn't believe the returns." Jenna smiled sweetly, slicing her chicken like she wasn't waiting for my pulse to spike. "We just want to make sure you're comfortable forever," she added. "You've done so much. Now it's our turn." Our. She said it like they were one person. And maybe, in greed, they were. Mark reached into his pocket and slid his phone across the table like it was a birthday card. "Look," he said, gesturing toward the screen. There it was, clear as day. A pending transfer, queued up in a banking app. The destination? Collins Group Holdings, LLC. The source? The joint account. The amount? $128,000. My money, set to hit his account by midnight. They thought I'd panic. They thought I'd stutter or snatch the phone or shout. I took a sip of water, set the glass down, then tilted my head. "What's it for?" "Reinvestment," Mark said smoothly. "It's not going anywhere. I'll grow it, protect it, think of it as future-proofing." He actually said that, like he was helping me, like I should thank him for the attempted robbery. Jenna leaned forward, grinning. "It'll be under our umbrella, of course, just easier for tax purposes." Tax purposes. They'd planned this. Months of small manipulations, joint access, trust framing, backhanded jokes about how complicated my finances were. This wasn't impulse. This was strategy. And still, I didn't flinch. Because the real show wasn't what they were doing. It was what they were saying. Every word recorded. Every arrogant lie cataloged. Jenna's voice hitched just once when I asked, lightly, "And when would I see that money again?" Mark chuckled like it was adorable. "Mom, come on." Technically, it's family money now. That line nailed the confession. I didn't even have to follow up. They just narrated their own indictment. The roast was getting cold. But the case? Oh, the case was hot. I topped off their wine glasses, let them talk, let them dig. Mark was practically glowing, giddy on control. He gestured with his fork, talking about shell corporations and real estate opportunities, like I should be proud. Jenna added little flourishes. How smart he was, how she'd always known he had a head for business. I didn't say much, just nodded, asked soft, harmless questions. "Oh, and where's the LLC registered?" Mark waved a hand. "Nevada. Paperwork's handled. You don't have to worry about a thing." Jenna reached for the folder on the buffet, just as I'd hoped, and scanned the fake account summary Helen had crafted. She tilted the page toward Mark. "Wait, is this the final balance? I thought we had a bit more in here." "We." Mark didn't blink. "That's just one account. I've already moved the other funds. To protect everything." I took a slow bite of potato. Chewed. "So," I said gently, "just to be clear, you moved my money from our joint account into your business account without asking?" Mark paused for the first time all night. Just a flicker. Then, "It's all in the family. Besides, I'm listed as a joint holder. Technically, it's legal." Technically. That was their word of choice. Like it made betrayal less sharp. Like it softened the theft. I smiled again. "Well, as long as I get to see how it's doing, I'd love to be kept in the loop." "Of course," Jenna said quickly, brushing imaginary lint from her sleeve. "Transparency is everything." They didn't see the red light blinking under the buffet. Didn't notice how my cardigan, hung neatly over the back of my chair, pointed straight at them. Didn't realize my lawyer had been listening in live for the last 8 minutes. Because arrogance is loud. And when it shows up to dinner, it narrates every crime like it's a damn TED Talk. That night, I didn't need confrontation. I didn't need proof of motive. I had something better. A trail of receipts. Verbal, digital, legal, all of it. Mark and Jenna had just confessed to orchestrating a 6-figure theft while chewing chicken, on camera, and dessert hadn't even been served. The chicken had cooled, but my resolve hadn't. Jenna was halfway through bragging about streamlining things when my phone buzzed in my lap. A silent vibration I'd been waiting for all night. Helen. One line. Transfer attempt confirmed. Denied. Funds secure. I didn't smile, didn't flinch, just set down my napkin and reached for the pie server. Across the table, Mark pulled out his phone. He always checked his accounts after dinner, like a kid peeking into the cookie jar he thought was full. I watched his face change in real time. 1 second, smooth, confident. Next, flicker, confusion, then that tiny bead of sweat just above his brow. He tried again, tapped faster, slower, locked the screen, unlocked it. Finally, he muttered, "Weird. Must be a system issue." I sipped my water. "Oh?" "Yeah, the transfer stuck in pending. It should have cleared by now." I said, nodding like it meant nothing. "Technology can be so unpredictable, can't it?" Jenna leaned toward him. "Try the business portal. Maybe it needs two-step verification again." Mark swore under his breath. I pretended not to hear. I stood and began clearing plates, and for the first time that evening, he didn't offer to help. He just sat there, phone in one hand, banking app frozen mid-transfer, smile long gone. Helen's message echoed in my mind. Funds secure. The account I'd moved the money into, the real one, was now firewalled behind a private trust with protections they couldn't touch. Not with a lawyer. Not with power of attorney. Not even with a crowbar. Mark's attempt had triggered a fraud alert Helen set up the week prior. It froze his access, flagged his business account, and notified the bank's legal department. He didn't know it yet, but his credit rating had just started melting. Jenna finally noticed the shift. Her cheerful pitch started to wobble. "Everything okay, babe?" He didn't answer. He was still tapping, still refreshing, and I just brought out the dessert, lemon tart, his favorite, set it gently on the table, laid down the dessert plates one by one. This wasn't just the midpoint of a meal. It was the midpoint of a collapse. The moment they realized their grip was slipping, and the woman they thought was weak was the one holding the knife. He looked so small in that moment. Mark, my only child, 42 years old, 3 inches taller than his father, now sitting in my dining room chair like a scolded schoolboy, shoulders hunched, jaw clenched, hands shaking over a phone that wouldn't obey. And for a second, 1 second, I almost pitied him, almost, until I remembered the mortgage I paid off when he and Jenna were struggling in 2019. The $68,000 I wired, no questions asked, because he said they'd lose the house otherwise. He promised he'd pay it back. Never did. Never even brought it up again. I remembered the Christmas after Richard died, when I sat at the dinner table waiting for them to stop by. The food went cold. The candles burned down. They never showed, not even a call. And I remembered, most of all, the look on his face when he slid that phone across my table earlier tonight, like a magician revealing a trick. He was proud. Proud of stealing from me. Proud of dressing it up as strategy, like he was doing me a favor while pocketing my life savings. That's when any lingering mercy I had curled up and died, because what Mark stole wasn't just money. It was the version of him I used to believe in. The boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street. The teenager who called me after his first breakup just to hear my voice. The man who once whispered, "Thanks, Mom," into my hair the night his daughter was born. That boy was gone. And the man who sat across from me now? He was a thief in a button-down shirt. Jenna caught my expression, and for the first time that night she looked uneasy. "You okay, Irene?" I blinked once, smiled thinly. "Oh, just thinking," she laughed nervously. "Well, don't overthink the money stuff. Mark's just trying to protect your future." "No," I said, still smiling. "He's trying to own it." The room went quiet. Mark looked up at me, eyes narrower now, defensive, not confused anymore, calculating, like he'd finally realized something was off, and it was too late. I stood and started stacking plates. "Dessert later?" He nodded slowly, trying to read me. Let him. Because while he sat there wondering what changed, I was already moving to checkmate. The lemon tart was plated, the coffee was poured, and the folder was waiting. I placed it gently on the table beside Mark's cup, the same folder Jenna had skimmed earlier, assuming it held nothing more than bills and bank statements. "Before we finish up," I said casually, "I'd like you to sign this, just to acknowledge what we discussed tonight." Mark raised an eyebrow, skeptical but not suspicious. "What's this for?" "Transparency," I said, echoing Jenna's earlier line. "You're always saying we should document everything. Jenna laughed. He really does love a paper trail. Mark opened the folder and glanced at the top sheet. The header read, Summary of Financial Discussion, October 25th, 2025 Parties. Irene Collins, Mark Collins, Jenna Collins. Below that, a few bullet points. Simple, clean, familiar. Transfer discussed from joint account to Collins Group Holdings, LLC. Mark Collins confirmed. Joint access used. Jenna Collins affirmed intent to consolidate funds. Irene Collins granted no prior written consent. Mark skimmed it too quickly. His eyes were still bouncing back to his phone, still waiting for the transfer confirmation that would never come. He picked up the pen without hesitation and signed. Jenna didn't even read it. She was too busy checking her lipstick in the back of her spoon. When I slipped the document back into the folder, my hands were steady. Because I wasn't holding a receipt, I was holding a signed confession, word for word, the transcript from the recording, the same phrases they'd said at dinner. Cleaned up, organized, bound for Helen's desk in the morning. They'd laughed, they'd admitted, they'd declared technically legal like it was some kind of shield. And now Mark had just confirmed every word with his signature. He handed the pen back with a smug little smile. Anything else you want to document, Mom? I looked him in the eye and said, No, Mark, that'll do just fine. He nodded and reached for dessert. And in that moment, I watched him eat lemon tart like a man who thought he'd just closed a deal. He just didn't know it was his own indictment. I let them finish dessert, gave them one last sip of coffee, one last illusion of control. Then I stood up, walked to the buffet, and picked up my phone. The one Mark insisted I keep in do not disturb mode so I wouldn't get confused by notifications. I turned off the silence, opened my messages, and tapped one button. Send. The files went directly to Helen, the signed transcript, the video backups, the audio from the pen. Then I turned back to them and said, gently, Thank you for dinner. Mark raised an eyebrow. You made dinner. Yes, I said, smiling. And dessert. I slid the folder across the table once more, but this time I left it open, revealing the line at the bottom. Delivered to Counsel for Legal Action, October 25th, 2025, 9 a.m. Jenna leaned forward to read. Her eyes widened. What is this? She asked, voice higher now. Wait, what is this? I looked at them both and answered, calm as glass. This document and tonight's video go to my attorney at 9 tomorrow. Mark's smile vanished. Mom, what the hell are you talking about? You signed it, I said, nodding to the paper. Your words, your transfer, your admission of intent. Jenna's face drained of color. You can't do that. I tilted my head. I already did. She froze. I lifted my phone slightly and showed them the sent check mark, still glowing on the screen. Mark's chair scraped as he pushed back from the table. You recorded us? I protected myself, I said, from the two people I should have been able to trust most. You tricked us, Jenna hissed. That's entrapment. No, I replied, my voice calm. That's documentation. Mark's face was pale now, really pale. The kind of pale that only happens when a man realizes he signed his own downfall because he didn't bother reading the fine print. Mark stood there stammering, all bravado gone. His voice cracked like he was 12 again and just got caught sneaking beer from the garage fridge. You can't prove intent, he finally snapped. This was a misunderstanding. He pointed at the folder like it had betrayed him. You twisted everything, Jenna added, voice shaking. We were trying to help you. I didn't respond. I reached for my phone, tapped one button and held it up. Speakerphone. The line rang once. Then a familiar voice answered, clear and sharp. Helen Tran. Mark froze. Jenna swallowed. Hi, Helen, I said sweetly, not taking my eyes off them. You're on speaker. We're just finishing up dessert. Helen didn't miss a beat. Oh, good. I just finished downloading the files. Excellent quality. I especially liked the part where Mr. Collins explained that the funds were technically family money now. Mark's jaw clenched. This isn't legal. Actually, Helen said, her voice now razor-wire smooth, under California Penal Code 368D, financial elder abuse doesn't require secrecy. It only requires intent and access. You gave us both. Jenna tried to speak. Wait, but Helen cut her off. Mrs. Collins, accounts were tampered with. Her trust was exploited, and now, thanks to your voluntary statements and that beautifully signed transcript, we have you dead to rights. Silence. No chewing. No sipping. Just two people realizing they'd walked into a legal buzzsaw with cloth napkins in their laps. I stood up, picked up the folder again, and tucked it under my arm like it was nothing more than a dinner menu. Mark was breathing heavily now. Mom, he said, softer. We can talk about this. No, I said, colder than I expected. You had plenty of chances to talk. Helen's voice came through one last time. The fraud report is being filed with the bank and the state's financial crimes unit in the morning. I suggest Mr. and Mrs. Collins prepare. Jenna finally found her voice. A whisper, desperate now. Prepare for what? For consequences, I said, because dinner was over. And now, the cleanup belonged to them. I didn't raise my voice, didn't point, didn't gloat. I just stood there, napkin in one hand, folder in the other, and looked directly at the boy I raised, the man I barely recognized. You wanted control, I said quietly. Well, now you have it. Control of your consequences. Mark looked like he'd been slapped. Jenna, still seated, was blinking fast, her hands clenched around her napkin like she could squeeze the moment into submission. Helen was still on speaker. Irene, she said, calm and professional now. Would you like me to read the conditions aloud? Please, I said, as I sat back down. Calm, in control, in command of the very table they thought they owned. Helen cleared her throat. Effective immediately, Mark Collins is to be removed from all joint accounts, access privileges, and listed beneficiaries associated with Irene Collins' financial assets. Mark looked up, panic flaring. You can't just, Helen continued. In lieu of criminal charges being filed today, Mr. and Mrs. Collins agreed to a formal restitution plan in the amount of $128,000, payable within 18 months, with monthly progress reports reviewed by counsel. Any further unauthorized access, communication with financial institutions, or attempts to challenge the agreement will trigger full legal prosecution. Jenna's voice broke. You're ruining him. I turned to her. No, I said. He ruined himself. I just gave him a mirror. Mark opened his mouth again, but Helen cut him off for the last time. Additionally, both parties are barred from contacting Irene Collins in person, by phone, or through third parties until repayment is complete in full. The silence after that was perfect. They sat there, blinking, shocked, trapped. The air in the room changed. Not suddenly, but finally. Mark had walked in with swagger. Jenna had walked in with condescension. Now, they were guests in a house that no longer welcomed them. Mark finally muttered, "This is insane." I stood, smoothed my sweater, looked him dead in the eye. "No," I said. "This is what happens when you mistake silence for weakness." I walked them to the door. Jenna's heels echoed like guilt across my hardwood floors. Mark hesitated at the threshold. "You're really doing this?" he whispered. I didn't answer, because I already had. By 9 o'clock the next morning, Helen had already filed the report. The bank's fraud division flagged every account connected to Collins Group Holdings, LLC. Internal compliance lit up like a Christmas tree. Their investigation moved fast. Too fast for Mark to cover anything. At 10:17 a.m., his business partner, a man named Greg, who once asked me if I had any extra capital lying around, received an automated fraud alert tied to the business account. At 10:22, Greg froze the company's assets. By noon, Mark had been locked out of both personal and professional banking portals. His emails to Helen went unanswered. His text to me bounced back. The rules were clear. No contact until restitution was paid in full. By 3 p.m., Jenna's parents called my landline. I didn't answer, but the voicemail played in full. "Irene, it's Darlene. We heard about whatever happened last night. I don't know what lies you're telling, but you've humiliated our daughter. Please call me back." I didn't. There was nothing left to explain, nothing left to defend. By dinner, a neighbor knocked gently on my door. Nancy, kind woman, widowed young. She handed me a Tupperware dish of chicken soup and whispered, "Saw them drive off with boxes. Are you okay?" I was more than okay. They'd packed up, left town. Mark, whose name was once on my house deed, my bank account, my emergency contact form, was now a cautionary tale. Jenna, who once called me sweet old mom, with sugar in her voice and poison in her eyes, didn't even say goodbye. People talk, especially in quiet neighborhoods. It didn't take long before the church ladies stopped asking where Mark was. Didn't take long for word to spread at the golf club Jenna once bragged about joining. Turns out, news travels faster than wire transfers, especially the kind that bounce. And me? I sat at my kitchen table, same one they tried to steal my future over, with a warm bowl of soup, my lawyer on retainer, and my power, finally, back where it belonged. In my name, and no one else's. The house they bragged about, our forever home, Jenna once called it, went on the market within the week. Mark didn't tell me. I saw the listing online. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, recently updated kitchen, open floor plan, motivated sellers. The photos still had a bowl of lemons on the counter. I wondered if Jenna even realized how symbolic that was. They had no choice. Restitution wasn't optional. Helen had drafted the payment plan with brutal precision. Monthly deposits, reviewed and verified, no late payments, no skipped months, every dollar accounted for. Mark tried to argue the timeline at first. Helen didn't budge. "You had time to plan a theft," she told him. "Now you'll make time to pay it back." And he did. Under supervision. The first $8,000 came through the following month. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even spend it. I had bigger plans. Because this wasn't just about recovery. It was about redefinition. I donated a portion of the reclaimed money to a local scholarship fund, but not anonymously, not quietly. I renamed it the Richard Collins Memorial Scholarship for Financial Ethics. Applicants had to write a short essay. What does integrity mean when no one is watching? I received the first batch of essays in the spring, handwritten, some typed, some clumsy, some brilliant. But every single one felt like a stitch in a wound I'd carried for too long. One girl wrote, "Trust is what money pretends to be." I read that line 5 times. When I chose the first recipient, I asked Helen to deliver the award in person. She did, wearing the same calm expression she had the night she read "Mark his consequences" over speakerphone. Word got around. Jenna's mother called again, left another voicemail. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" She still didn't get it. This wasn't about revenge. This was about rescue. Of my dignity, my narrative, my right to be more than someone else's stepping stone. Mark was paying monthly. Quiet now, polite, distant. Jenna had gone silent. But me? I was louder than I'd ever been. Not with my voice, but with my actions. Because sometimes the sweetest justice is a young student getting a shot at college because I refused to stay silent. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. What would you have done if your own child tried to steal your life savings? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.